Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sunny Go One Piece podcast. On this episode, we're going to be diving into episodes 323 through 325, which will cover manga chapters 438 through 440. And now we're getting back to the canon story, and we have finally come to the end of the Water 7 saga in its entirety. Now we get to see the world react to the new levels of notoriety the Straw Hats are now enjoying. So, synopsis. The new ship and the shipwright, the Thousand Sunny and Frankie, they are now secured and almost ready to leave Water 7. However, there is still one thing to resolve, and that is with Usopp. But they don't have the luxury of waiting, as Garp is intent on apprehending them. Elsewhere, the world, friends of the Straw Hats, and all of the other people react to the new crew bounties, while Ace finally catches up to Blackbeard to bring justice for their murdered crewmate. Alrighty, so differences. There really weren't that many differences. The only major one is just the order in which they showed the check-ins for all the rest of the Straw Hats' friends. So in the manga, it's a different order where right after Smoker and Tashigi, those still remain the same as the first two people that we see reactions from. The manga actually heads to Arabasta first, and then we see their celebration. Then after that, we see the remainder of the check-ins with everyone else. So yeah, it's a very interesting change in order where in the anime, we see the celebration completely separate from all the check-ins afterwards. And then we actually see all the check-ins in sequence all together. However, Arabasta in the anime is saved for the very end, as opposed to being the second one. I'm not sure why they changed the order. Maybe they just wanted more impact from Vivi, because she's probably the most significant reaction out of all the different people to see. But anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into my thoughts. And right off the bat, we learn the explanation as to why Garp and the Marines have reconsidered going after Luffy and the Straw Hats, as Garp was annoyingly chewed out by Sengoku, which is pretty funny. I particularly find it very humorous how Kobe, in this very uptight militaristic way of speaking, yells to Garp, "We just had a very pleasant goodbye with Luffy and the others. This is quite embarrassing." And I love Kobe and his dynamic with both Garp and Helmeppo. Like, they have obviously it's a very respectful one, and Kobe definitely holds Garp in high reverence, but at the same time, Garp probably being very similar to Luffy in that he's not hugely uptight, and so Kobe is allowed to speak somewhat freely around Garp, and I like that sort of dynamic. But yeah, living his sort of lazy justice, we see also on the boat, Aokiji is hitching a ride with them because he's too lazy to ride his bike all the way back to HQ. But not only that, he doesn't even seem to care about catching the Straw Hats either, which makes sense, because it seems like deep down, he's rooting for them, and especially Robin, since at multiple points, Aokiji could have captured or killed the Straw Hats at any point during this saga, and seemingly just lets them go over and over. And so, yeah, you get the sense that Aokiji, it basically confirms that Aokiji is essentially rooting for them as long as they're not an immediate threat. The other thing to note is how even though Aokiji outranks Garp as an admiral, Garp isn't afraid to shout or bark back at an admiral. And not only that, he seems to have somewhat of a close relationship with Sengoku to the point where he wasn't even afraid of straight up telling Sengoku he won't pursue Luffy because he's his grandson. Garp, despite his rank being only a vice admiral, seems to still command quite a lot of respect among the admirals and even the fleet admiral. And it's a very interesting dynamic that I hope we get to learn more about, which, spoiler alert, we will learn more about it. Getting back to the Straw Hats, they've now set sail, but there's still one loose end that they're anxiously waiting for to resolve, and that's Usopp, who's nowhere to be seen at the moment. And at this point, Chopper, Nami, and Frankie are all starting to get really concerned that they're really about to set sail without him. Even though Luffy sounds calm about it, he's done everything he can to wait for his return, but when it cuts to a close-up of his face, you can see the literal fear and worry in his face, as his eyes are like in abject terror while trying to put on a smile as his face is just drenched in sweat. It's actually a pretty funny moment looking back on it. We then see a flashback to a couple nights ago, and we actually, I believe, saw a bit of this from Usopp's perspective when Usopp was first trying to go back and reconsider, because he saw how intense everyone was staring at each other. And I believe it was this moment playing out when they were doing this discussion. And this is another one of those quietly amazing moments in the series. I wouldn't say it's underrated or anything because many people recognize how amazing this is, but it's kind of understated, I guess I should say. This next scene, it doesn't often get talked about as much because of how quiet it is, but it's one of those small scale moments in One Piece that I believe contributes to distinguishing how great of a storyteller Oda is compared to most other pieces of fiction, and particularly manga. The scene, of course, I'm referring to is this scene where, after hearing the news from Sanji that he saw Usopp rehearsing his comeback, Luffy, Nami, and Chopper all get super excited and even want to go straight away to and welcome him back, but is stopped dead in their tracks by Zoro, who effectively takes his first mate role in full stride here as he begins to scold and lecture Luffy, as well as everyone else, about what position he's actually in here in regards to Usopp. It's kind of crazy just how much authority he's just taken over from the captain of the ship when you really think about it, as he completely shuts down any thought of just welcoming back Usopp without any sort of atonement or repentance. As heartless as it may sound, the thing is though, Zoro is 100% right, and he outlines his rationale very clearly and concisely. Similarly to when Luffy was getting close to breaking down after their duel, Zoro was there to remind him what it means to be a captain, and here Zoro is once again here to remind Luffy what it means to be a captain of a pirate crew and how serious it is, and it's serious business. They need to be able to depend and trust each other with their lives, and if that foundation is built on anything less than a sturdy one, that basically dooms any crew. And you kind of get the sense that Zoro may actually have seen this or experienced this firsthand. And this can also be viewed in sort of a lot of real life groups and relationships as well. The idea that yes, people make mistakes and we should find a way to forgive them, but only if they understand the gravity of the mistake they made and truly wish to reflect and atone for those mistakes. Otherwise, there will always be this doubt and lack of trust, and even resentment that builds up slowly that can cause doom for whatever group, organization, or relationship. And this is such an amazing moment, showing the true strength of the Straw Hats. They not only depend on each other, but they all have the freedom to say what needs to be said for the betterment of the crew and not just out of a sense of seniority or superiority in terms of rank. And file this sort of leadership down when you're thinking about how you're going to manage and lead a group of people. Well, yes, as a leader, yeah, you'll need to command a certain sense of respect and authority, but at the same time, you want to foster a trusting and communicative environment where everyone, and anyone feels that they can voice their opinions so that you can make the best decisions possible. For example, imagine if Luffy was like one of those authoritarian captains like Don Krieg, who never tolerates his crew talking back to him. People like Zoro, Nami, Sanji, or even Chopper would never be able to speak, to what the best course of action would be in any given situation, especially in difficult times. Since Luffy is virtually an idiot when it comes to a lot of those things that they are experts at, he has to defer to the experts, and Luffy is a humble and smart enough man to realize that, just as he said back when he was fighting Arlong, when he said that there's many things he can't do, so that's why he surrounds himself with such an amazing group of people to help him. And this moment perfectly demonstrates just how important that is for the Straw Hats on a much deeper level than something like, oh, Luffy needs Sanji because he can't cook type of thing. They all agree that they will welcome Usopp back with open arms, but only when he truly apologizes for leaving the crew like he did. I really like that touch where we see even Sanji agreeing with Zoro, showing that despite their constant squabbling, when it comes to serious matters, they will always put that aside and put the crew first and have each other's backs. Also, shout out to Nakai Kazuya for his performance here. He knocks it out of the park, especially when they're all try to reason with him, but then slams his sword down into the floor. Is like, is leaving the crew that trivial of a thing? And yeah, I really love how he sells that moment. Then once we get back on the ship in the present day, we see desperately Luffy trying to come off as being okay, still reasoning that they gave Usopp plenty of time to come apologize. And like that, despite how harsh Zoro seemed, when Robin looks back at him, he's also clenching his Wado Ichimonji pretty hard, showing that that Zoro wants Usopp back as well, and is frustrated that he hasn't shown himself yet. Then we cut to Usopp running to the coast, still rehearsing different scenarios where he'd be welcomed back with open arms as a hero, which makes you start to wonder if Usopp is actually sorry and will he actually put aside his pride and apologize? But with the sudden appearance of Garp here to apprehend the Straw Hats, it now also becomes a race to see if Usopp will even make it there on time. Speaking of Garp, I love how he announces himself to Luffy. It's like, "Oi, Luffy, kochira ji-chan, kochira ji-chan." Like, "Hey, Luffy, this is Grandpa, this is Grandpa." Like, I like that he uses ji-chan, which is kind of an informal shorthand similar to like, "This is Gramps." And not to mention his casual threat of, "Sorry, but I'm gonna need to send you to the bottom of the ocean." Then, as a courtesy, he tells them that he'll be the only one to attack them as he has one of his soldiers just bring him a cannonball. And in his first display of his strength, he grabs the cannonball like it's a baseball and just hucks it faster than we've ever seen a real cannonball being fired. Like ridiculously faster with his bare hands. I mean, Garp is crazy strong. I don't think anyone on the Straw Hats are capable of that at this moment. It just makes you wonder just how strong Garp is in a fight based on his reputation and what we've seen here. He's possibly just as strong, if not stronger, than maybe even the Admirals, although we don't even know if he has a Devil Fruit yet, but I get the sense that he doesn't have one. But I'd expect nothing less from Luffy's grandpa. But then Usopp finally arrives as Chopper notices his scent, but he's shocked to see that the ship's already set sail, and he's starting to get scared they're actually leaving him behind despite everything he did to help them during the NES lobby rescue. Usopp then somehow jumps like 100 foot off the bridge to the ground, which is impressive. But despite calling out to them, acting like nothing happened, Luffy and Zoro continue to pretend to not notice, and this is a pretty intense scene, even though you know somehow this is going to work out in the end. Usopp eventually gets to the coast and he starts to get agitated, but it starts to dawn on him that they actually are intent on leaving him behind, and begins to reflect on everything that's transpired. The moment seems like it's building up to a boiling point as it appears Usopp is getting really angry and ready to tell them off by the tone in his voice, but then the next thing that comes out of his mouth is a loud and emphatic, "I'm sorry," like, "Gomen!" And "I'm sorry for being so prideful, I was wrong." Like, and Usopp finally accepts his fault and admits what he truly wants and begs to return to the crew with a massive amount of tears and snot running down his face as Luffy has finally heard what he needed to hear and extends his arm all the way to Usopp. And at first it seems like he's coolly smiling, but then it hilariously reveals Luffy is just as emotional about Usopp's return, with the most ridiculous face we've seen on Luffy to this point, in my opinion, as he shouts, "You idiot! Grab my hand already!" Wow! Like, it's such a touching but hilariously stupid moment. With that, Usopp is back and the whole crew is reunited, and I don't think any other media has ever given me this experience of suspense, tears, laughter, joy, excitement, and warmth, all in the same like 10 seconds. It's truly something special that One Piece and Oda can accomplish that I don't think anything else has ever really come close to matching, for me at least. With Usopp finally back, they all celebrate while trying to avoid the barrage of cannonballs from Garp. But unexpectedly, they all get told to furl the sails, which is strange when they're trying to outrun the Marines. But Frankie is sure about that plan and has something up his sleeve. But first, before they go any further, he stops and tells everyone that they need to pick a name for the new ship before they set on their new voyage. Which, that's some confidence to be able to stop and discuss the name of a ship when you have a vice admiral pursuing and attacking you. This scene is freaking hysterical, though, with the names that are offered up here, especially the nonsense ones that Luffy suggests, as they're all just random assortments of animals with lion at the end, or at least some of them. Like the first one he offers up bear, polar bear, lion, or tiger, wolf, lion, and then eventually devolving into a name that doesn't even feature the lion, with quite possibly the funniest one that literally made me do a spit take while watching this, because I forgot about this one, the squid octopus chimpanzee. And all the while, Usopp is back with his trademark Tsukomi gags of telling Luffy to stop with these cursed names. It's just, I love how Usopp just like folds right back in. And later on, Luffy drops a fourth one this time, but this time bringing lion back in the name. But for some reason, this version has a food in it. And as he mentions, he was about to suggest dumpling, gorilla, lion before we get the final name. And we then get a brief flashback of the shipwrights all admiring the figurehead that's about to go on the ship, but getting it wrong in every interpretation between Polly and Iceberg. But Iceberg, in a way, gets it kind of right with his interpretation of it being a sun. And Frankie clearly meant it to be a lion, the king of beasts, as he says. Iceberg then offers his suggestion, the Thousand Sunny, the ship that will sail the thousand seas joyfully like the sun. And it's absolutely perfect. And the namesake for this podcast. You know, that's what the podcast was originally named after. And it's actually more so than that. And a little, short personal side tangent as to why I use the name Sunny Go. First off, the go part comes from the fact that in Japanese, you add the suffix go to indicate that it's a vessel. So that's why you hear them call it the going merigo or thousand sanigo, or most of the time they call it the sanigo. And at the time, I had just bought my Xbox 360 and was wondering what I wanted to use for my Xbox Live gamer tag, and I couldn't come up with anything. And I probably spent like a good hour and a half just at that screen trying to figure out what I wanted to call myself, because I knew I was going to be stuck with it for a while. And I looked up at my One Piece manga collection, which was, right above my my monitor, and this was when the Sunny was just introduced, and thought Sunny Go sounds perfect and fits me pretty well too. And to this day, I still have that Xbox gamer tag and pretty much use Sunny Go for most things in my life as the handle name, because I've grown really attached to it. Hence why it was perfect for me to call my podcast the Sunny Go as well. So yeah, just a little personal tangent there. But anyways, with that decided, they're ready to escape for real, and Luffy says his final goodbyes to Garp and Kobe and tries to say bye to Helmeppo as well, which is hilarious because he tries to attempt to remember and can't come up with his name, so he just gives up and moves on. And of course, Helmeppo was super offended and that he didn't call out his name too. And I also love how enamored Kobe is with Luffy and his sort of fanboyism, which is on full display here. And in an effort to not let Luffy go, Garp drags out this enormous, and I mean enormous, chain ball from somewhere. Like, seriously, where was this massive chain ball kept? Because it doesn't even look like the ship that they're on could fit that ball, much less stay afloat with it on board. I mean, it's so comically absurd how big this thing is. Then there's the fact that Garp can throw this thing one-handed is crazy too. But just as the ball comes crashing down, Frankie reveals the key special feature that the Sunny Go has, as it naturally can perform the coup de burst to launch itself into the air, similar to how Frankie got them all out on the Mary from Enies Lobby. But Usopp also mentions how this feels very similar to how it felt when they were flying on the Mary on their way to Skypiea. And then during that, Frankie then mentions how Mary's brave soul will be inherited by the Sunny as they're doing it. And there's nothing that the Mary could do that the Sunny can't. And you might say that the Sunny inherited Mary's will, which is, again, right on brand for One Piece. And I love that no one is actually upset that Straw Hats got away on the Marine side. Garp is proud of his grandson, Kobe is obviously fanboying, and Aokiji is pleased that they got away as well. And to put a nice bow on Water 7 and their side of things, to start the return of some form of normalcy with Iceberg, in his brother's place, adopts the Frankie family and offers them work, to which they all start calling him Aniki or brother, which is cute. And so yeah, the latter half of this middle episode, we get to see the reactions from all around the world of the news of the Straw Hats and their new collective bounties. And I always love this. I know this is the first time we see this type of moment, but this will become a staple of the series going forward, of seeing the reactions of everyone, with the Strong Hats and how they get stronger each time after every arc or saga. And we see the reactions from all the people that the Straw Hats have met and their reactions to their exploits. And it's so fun and nostalgic to see old characters that we haven't seen in a long time. Some of these people we haven't seen forever, like years. And we start off with an unlikely pair with Smoker and Tashigi's reaction. And one thing that might be glossed over is that Tashigi has been promoted from Sergeant Major to Ensign, and no doubt due to her contribution and heroics on Arabasta and her part in apprehending Crocodile. So good for her. Realizing that in order to continue pursuing the Straw Hats, Smoker himself needs to rank up from captain to await them in the new world. It'll be interesting to see how Smoker will factor into the rest of the story because he seems dead set on chasing the Straw Hats. We then move to Baratie, Sanji's home, as they all mock and laugh hysterically at his absurd wanted poster, and I love it. But despite that, they're all super proud of him and even use his poster as a marketing tool to promote the restaurant, which is really sweet at the same time. We then move next to Fuchsia Village, Luffy's hometown, as they all celebrate Luffy's accomplishment while the mayor is trying to be a stick in the mud, as always, while Makino is just happy to see that Luffy is making friends and having fun, which is also a really sweet moment as well. Then on to Syrup Village, and this one is funny because it doesn't actually say Usopp, but Kaya and the Usopp Pirate Gang kids all know that it's Usopp because of the nose. And I also really love seeing how much Kaya loves Usopp as she rededicates herself to studying to become a doctor to help heal Usopp when he returns from his adventures. And the kids also see just how much she cares and vows to smack Usopp if he ever makes her unhappy. All around a super warm moment. And then the next stop is Shimotsuki Village, where Zoro's dojo is, as all the young disciples are all super excited that the famous pirate hunter Zoro, or Kaizoku Gari no Zoro, is a former student. But Koshiro, his former master, has to quell their excitement as he doesn't want all his students following in the footsteps of a pirate. But internally, he knows what kind of man Zoro is, and while he was surprised by the path he's chosen, he knows that Zoro is still staying true to his swordsmanship or kendo. Next, we get to see Kokoyashi Village, Nami's home, where we see Genzo and Nojiko discussing Nami's quote-unquote lewd wanted poster as he's trying to reach Marine HQ to get the photo changed because he's worried more suitors or people coming after Nami for her looks will come rather than bounty hunters. But in reality, he loves the picture as he's had it blown up to preposterous size and hung it in his station. And I kind of teared up again when Luffy's promise to Genzo is mentioned, how he would never take away Nami's smile. And Nojiko points out this proves to them that Luffy is still holding to that promise, which is a perfect callback as we see Bellemare grave. Just a few more stops as we get to see the former Kingdom of Drum, or the newly renamed Sakura Kingdom, Chopper's home country, as we get to see Dalton and Dr. Kureha react to the posters. They also realize the amount is probably a mistake as they both know just how strong Chopper is, but again, it's really heartwarming to see Kureha and Dalton so proud and happy for Chopper. It's also really cool to see that despite being named the ruler of Sakura Kingdom, Dalton turned down an opportunity to live in the castle and still chooses to live among the people, which fits his character so well. But also, speaking of character, I love that his penchant for inserting random details has not changed either, as he just randomly mentions he loves chestnut rice, even though no one asked about that. Like, who asked? But I love Dalton. And on our last stop, we head to Arabasta as we see that Cobra, Igaram, Pell, and Chaka are all shocked and confused as to why Robin, aka Miss All Sunday, is now part of the crew, and are concerned how Vivi will take the news, but when it's brought up, she already says she knew, and it doesn't even bother her as she knows it's Luffy and she trusts him implicitly. And it's always great to see Vivi and seeing her trust in the Straw Hats, as well as her maturity as a princess. Now that's all the places we know of, but there's one last stop we've never seen, and that's on an island we've never been to called Baldigo, where none other than the Revolutionary Army is based, and we get to see none other than Luffy's father, Dragon, react to his son's accomplishments as he wants him to live as he is and states that they'll eventually cross paths again. This is the first time we've seen or heard from Dragon since Logtown, and this is a man that is still literally bathed in mystery, and we really don't get much here, but you still get a sense of just how big of a looming presence he is with just this scene alone. It's pretty incredible just seeing this scene, especially upon rewatch, how much of a presence he has while not really having a presence in the story very much, if that makes any sense. But with that, we return to the Sunny and we finally get our traditional new crew welcome cheers celebration. But this one is extra special as we get to celebrate not only our new Nakama Frankie, but the return of both Usopp and Robin, as well as the new ship, the Thousand Sunny, which is another staple of the series at this point that we will, that we as fans all look forward to here on out, because this moment does happen at many points throughout the series as well. But yeah, for this final episode though, 325, we go on a slight detour away from the Straw Hats to see that Blackbeard has also learned of Luffy's exploits and is preparing to go after his bounty again like prior to Skypiea to gain favor with the world government for some reason. However, before that, Blackbeard is finally found by Ace after searching for him for so long. And I'll be honest, this episode and chapter was a complete surprise to me when it happened. I was not expecting these two to go up against each other at this point in the story. I knew Ace was strong, but just based on Shanks' warning to Whitebeard, we all knew this was not going to end well for Ace, which sets the stakes of this fight up really high right from the get-go. And like I've mentioned in the past, while Ace's cover story isn't required reading for this, it does kind of set this moment up. Blackbeard asks Ace to join his crew, surprisingly, saying he's already got a plan in place for how he's going to rise to power, even surpassing his old captain Whitebeard. And the first step of his plan is to go after Luffy for his bounty, which, hearing this, fires up Ace even more. And yes, pun intended. Blackbeard is a really interesting and looming threat, as we don't quite know what he's capable of or what he really even wants, but it seems he's been hiding and coming up with a plan to reign over the Grand Line and become the Pirate King. But everything about this guy just screams shady. Also, pun intended, for later, as you'll see. However, this episode is really awesome as we get to see Ace really go all out with his Mera Mera no Mi. And we finally get to see what exactly makes Blackbeard such a threat. At first, it seems like they don't stand a chance against Ace, and even Blackbeard remarks to Augur and Burgess not to intervene as they're no match for Ace, but it seems like Blackbeard is not much against Ace's fire as well, but there's still something really creepy and ominous about how he laughs, and there's a reason why Akio Otsuka plays these major villain roles like All for One in My Hero Academia or Xehanort from Kingdom Hearts in the Japanese version, because his voice is amazing for these types of roles. But yeah, it's interesting because, when we're first introduced to Blackbeard in Jaya, you don't really get a sense that he's just all that strong. He's just kind of weird and creepy. But we finally start to learn more about Blackbeard here as we learn why he ended up murdering his own crewmate, Thatch, as it was because he wanted the devil fruit that Thatch found. And we find that the sole reasons for him even wanting to be on that ship was to get a hold of this specific fruit. One other interesting thing to note that's brought up here is that there's an encyclopedia of devil fruits, which is interesting because up till now it seems most people know little to nothing of devil fruits aside from the people in the know. But the fact that there's a book that documents all the known fruits, you'd imagine devil fruits, while rare, wouldn't necessarily be treated as reverently or as mystically as they are as they were in the beginning of the series. But I suppose that mostly occurs outside the Grand Line in the blues. But yeah, I still find it weird that there's a book that explains what devil fruits are, yet people talk, earlier on in the series just kind of talk as if they may not even exist, or they're kind of like these, mythical urban legends or something like that. We then finally get introduced to the devil fruit that Blackbeard has, and it is a very unique fit for him as it's an incredibly powerful Logia devil fruit that controls the darkness, the Yami Yami no Mi, or the dark fruit, which allows him to turn into darkness and shadows. It allows him to absorb anything into darkness, kind of like a black hole, which incidentally is the name of one of his moves. And then he's able to dispel anything he's sucked up back out of those black holes, which is a pretty terrifying ability because if that shit gets you, you could get dragged into who knows where or even killed. And here you can start to see one of Ace's character flaws, which is his arrogance and overconfidence. At seeing this power, even from someone of Ace's power, would still know not to underestimate something like this, especially in the hands of someone as shady as Teach. However, there are a couple quirks about the Yami Yami no Mi that are different from other Logia types. The first we learn is that it absorbs everything, including attacks and the pain from those attacks. Specifically, it heightens pain. Yami is not invulnerable like the other Logia types. However, the other and more intimidating part of this fruit is the ability to absorb and nullify devil fruit powers of others if he gets a hold of them physically. This is probably one of the reasons he was after this specific fruit, but I also have some questions which I'll talk about in the spoiler section. One thing I don't quite understand about this fight that's a bit convenient is why Ace just doesn't keep attacking and overwhelming Blackbeard with crazy amounts of fire, because he can clearly hit him, and it's not like Blackbeard is fast enough to avoid them. But nonetheless, Teach gets the better of Ace, unfortunately. And you could kind of explain it away as Ace again being arrogant and overconfident and not trying to finish, Blackbeard off quickly, but it just seems weird how he's able to hit him multiple times, but he doesn't go for like a finishing blow. I think because he wants to torture him a little bit. Like, I don't think Ace is a very malicious person, but I think he takes the fact that his, a crewmate being killed very seriously and wants Teach to pay for it. But it just seems weird how Ace just seemed to have the upper hand, yet he doesn't do anything about it until it's too late. But yeah, as this fight continues on, it becomes clear that Ace is outmatched, but it ends in a final blaze of glory with Ace creating the literal sun called the Entei, or Flame Emperor. And yes, for you Pokemon fans, that is why the legendary Fire Beast from Pokemon Gold and Silver is named Entei as well, as he's the base Fire Emperor. However, we don't actually get to see the aftermath of this fight or whether Ace is alive or dead. But again, given Oda's track record, I think it's safe to assume Ace is still alive. But yeah, this was a shocking and monumental event in the story because this sets in motion a lot of crazy potential for different directions the story could go from here. What will Luffy do when he finds out about this? Can he even take Blackbeard right now, considering Ace didn't even stand a chance? What is Blackbeard's plan with Ace? How Shanks and Whitebeard will respond? Not to mention the narrator makes it very clear that this is the start of something that will have a big impact on the story. But what that is, it's not very clear. And yeah, this creates a huge shift for the story of One Piece because not only does it expand it beyond the scope of just the Straw Hats, but it seems to indicate that there is going to be a shift in the world where Blackbeard is now finally coming to power and he's coming for the heads of the current head, basically Whitebeard, the one of the Yonko, and you think maybe even Shanks, seeing as how they have history as well. And so, yeah, this seems like a very big shift in the power structure within the world of One Piece, and it's very interesting to see how much wider the world of One Piece feels at the end of this saga. Of course, I'm not really going to sit here and speculate on what's going to happen with Ace because I already know what happens to Ace. But yeah, there is it is pretty interesting if you haven't, if you're still spoiler free about everything that's about to happen in the next 300 chapters or 300 episodes. But there it is, the conclusion to the Water 7 saga, and what an amazing saga it was. Next podcast, I will be doing a broader level review of what I liked and didn't like about the saga, as well as the themes, characters, and elements that I enjoyed most or thought were really interesting. So please look forward to that. But if you did enjoy this, send me a like or comment, and if you want to join me on this journey of rewatching One Piece, please consider subscribing. Check out my Instagram and Twitter account at SunnyGo Podcast if you want updates of when I post new episodes, or see some pictures of my manga collection. Please check those out. I've also recently started to stream via Twitch, so if you want to come chat or watch me play games, I'd be happy to see you at twitch.tv/sunny__go. That's Sunny and then 2 underscores GO. As always, I wanted to thank you for taking the time out to listen to my podcast. There will be a spoiler section, so hang around if you'd like to hear that. But if not, stay safe out there, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Bye. Alrighty, so spoiler sections. Like I've said in the past, these are going to be fairly unscripted, so just me mostly rambling. But there's a few things that I wanted to talk about because obviously this sets up a lot of different story threads. But first off, this is obviously big spoilers for the end of Wano, but the Thousand Sunny and the name as well as sort of the theming of the ship being the sun in association with the sun god that Luffy will eventually become when he unlocks and awakens the model Nika. And it's kind of crazy to me that, when you look at all the theming of the sun and just how many times like the dawn and sort of just the imagery of the sun either rising in like the opening themes or the sun setting in ending themes or even in opening themes, you make it seems like obviously Oda planned this from the very beginning, because I don't know how you could really come up with this many types of sun imagery without ever having this in place. And it kind of blows my mind now looking back on particularly the Thousand Sunny as well as Skypiea with the god, the sun god and everything. I mean, when that was revealed, it was insane. And like looking back now and rewatching the stories and just how many times the sun was such a central sort of theme or presence is mind-blowing, to the point where when you see the Thousand Sunny and you see that name and you're just like, oh. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But also, the significance and the meaning behind the name becomes even more significant, considering that Luffy, who is the literal sun god, will sail the entire world and bring joy everywhere he goes. Like, Iceberg essentially just says exactly what Luffy will do and ends up doing for most of the time. He is the sun, or the sun god, that sails across the entire ocean and brings joy wherever he goes. It's exactly what he's doing and what he will eventually do once he reaches the end of the world when he gets to Laugh-Tale and gets the One Piece. Like, I mean, that's just insane. I mean, Iceberg literally just says the entire thing, the entire conceit of the story of Luffy and the Straw Hats. It's crazy. So yeah, when I go back and watch this or reread this portion of the story, you're just like, my God, Oda, you son of a bitch. Like, it's pretty crazy. The next thing I kind of wanted to talk about was his polar opposite with Blackbeard, and specifically why he wanted the Yami Yami no fruit, despite, Haki being a thing. And it's not like Blackbeard didn't know about Haki. Like, he clearly knew it, because Whitebeard had it, Roger had it, Shanks had it. Everyone he knew had it, and he knew its existence, even though our heroes at this point don't really know what Haki is. And so I find it interesting that at this point in the story, when he mentions the fact that he wants this fruit specifically for a very, specific reason, and your mind thinks to, oh, he wants it because it helps negate devil fruits, but that can't possibly be the real reason, because Haki is a thing. Haki negates devil fruits basically anyways. Like, you can punch through Logia, fruit users and all of that. So that can't possibly it. And so my thinking is that it had more to do with the fact that I'm pretty sure, and this hasn't necessarily been revealed even where I'm at in in manga chapter 1066. I think Blackbeard wanted it because it has something specifically to do with the fact that it allowed him to steal devil fruits. Because I think this is why he needed it so bad. Something about the Yami Yami no fruit, as well as its ability to suck in he's figured it out how to weaponize that and steal the actual fruit, not just steal the powers temporarily, but steal them permanently. And so I think he's able to basically, just like he can do it with material objects, he can suck the power and keep it and then expel it onto somebody else, which is why he can give himself the Guragura no Mi when he takes it from Whitebeard, or he's been able to give like the Skesuke no Mi to Devon, or as we see later on, he's basically given all of his commanders different fruits, which is also pretty shocking to see. And so now his entire crew is just basically jacked up on powerful devil fruits. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the Yami Yami no Mi is the mystery to how he's been able to steal devil fruits, because up even to this day, we still don't quite know what that mechanic is and how he's been able to do that. And obviously, the massive incident that's soon to take place that the narrator mentions at the end of the episode 325 is, of course, talking about the Impel Downs and Luffy breaking in to take, to save Ace, as well as the Great Pirate War at Marineford, which in fact this event does set in motion. And it's kind of crazy to see that over the next like 200 to 300 episodes, this one moment is basically what sets all of that in motion. And Oda's already got all that in his head. I mean, he's basically got the last half of the last or the middle quarter of the story all planned out. I mean, he's famous for, obviously, when he gets to Sabodi, he's famous for including the supernovas just on a whim almost. But obviously, he had the idea for the Straw Hats being split up. He had the idea for Impel Downs, and then, of course, the war. And so, yeah, he's basically had this entire outline kind of already in his head at this point already. And that's not for another, 300 episodes from now, which is kind of crazy to think about. But anyways, this episode is also running really long, so I'm going to cap it there. But thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode. See ya.